You don't seem to understand. Tertium isn't yours to conquer.
Judge, jury, executioner, all rolled into an affable bundle of joy. One crazed individual aboard the Morning Star stands as a paragon of self-defined dedication to the Emperor of Mankind. The singular zealot entity known as the Judge, or rather entities. There's two of them, and not in some fancy metaphorical way that would have certain folks falling off their chair in excitement. It would be criminal to feature one voice so prominently when there's a second performance available to the Judge personality.
A tank with a heavy flamer would be very welcome about now.
I figured a deep dive, or at least an amateur dissection of the Judge, would be fun before the Lex Mega fans show up. So, welcome to the first of a maybe potentially happening reject personality video series, where I play countless in-game voice lines and pretend I know these silly folks like the back of my own hand. Since Darktide does a stellar job of humanizing our three demented warriors of faith, it's pretty easy to identify a character, even in the midst of your average Havoc 40 game. That said, it's not uncommon to hear them contradict themselves every other voice line, making things a bit tricky narratively. Hypocrisy is a built-in feature of the Zealot preacher, or really anyone who has adopted the bladderings of the Imperial cult.
What finer life can there be than the punishment of the deluded?
Yes, I rather imagine that's what the heretics say about us.
But there is an important difference.
Which is?
They are wrong.
If the ecclesiarchy did some introspection, it would be very upset with itself. As such, it favors those who are unquestioning, those very much like the Judge. The Judge is the most outwardly complacent and unapologetic of the three. In a fancy brainwashed zealot way of thinking, you could say that means they are the most faithful. As it were, their worship of the Emperor is exceedingly genuine, and for particularly spurned rejects, a zealot who actually believes what they're saying is perhaps the scariest of all.
I regret that the world has treated you badly. But what else can be done with a freak such as you?
We were this close.
Not that the others are faithless, just that the Judge takes the cake, a formidable achievement considering Agitator is on the roster.
Oh, I believe if the precepts of Saint Amelia would prove particularly apt at this time.
After playing a bit too much of this game, you start to get a feel of when rejects are going to start yapping, although after recent changes, rejects will start bonding in pretty much any situation. Fnatic may start coaxing the others for Amasec while soaring through a chaos spawn, Agitator's phobic rants interrupted by the violent logic of an Ogryn.
Perfidious Eldar!
And Judge will no doubt be talking about their glorious purpose while their knees shatter under the weight of a power cell. Tertium is challenging them by means unexpected, and it's kind of breaking them in both tragic, wholesome, and hilarious ways.
Farewell, Slab. May you know his peace. Come, heretics, and face judgment! As a child, I always longed to join the Ordo Hereticus.
For the Judge, preaching the beneficent Emperor's wisdom to a crowd of folks who probably aren't going to listen, as well as a crowd of folks who definitely aren't going to listen, is a dream come true. One side will learn in time, and the other will serve as a lesson or as an excuse to let loose.
I strive to be even-handed in all things. Your failings I see as rough edges to be smoothed away through righteous deeds.
However, it's precisely the fact that they are dealing with people that their words are often inopportune. It's not played for laughs as much as the other zealot quirks, but the Judge is socially inept, sometimes even being portrayed as an outcast among outcasts. Apparently, believing the Emperor has an unseen plan for every moment of your life can cause problems for your psyche. Of course, they don't blame the Emperor when something turns out to be as viscerally disagreeable as fighting the entire poxhound population of Tertium. I guess the scriptures they've read never mentioned doing anything along those lines.
Let me guess, the nasty reality of soldiering setting in.
I am not afraid to die, if that is what you mean.
But
it is wearying to be constantly shot at.
Even if the Emperor wants you to die in an explosion of pus and guts, or perish by the millions in a manufactorum, then it was simply ordained, and the fact that governors and politicians are trying to inflict the same fate upon Atoma's citizens is quite frankly sinful. The Judge's studies, including their understanding of scripture and ministorum doctrine, are incredible to the point of impressing the other zealots, but nobody has told them that their constant Grox metaphors don't sound that cool when you're talking about the oppressive workings of the Imperium.
For every Grox returned to the fold, the Grox herd rejoiced.
Actually, come to think of it, I've been told plenty of times.
Behold the fruits of heresy, deformity, delusion, and damnation!
oh, that's snappy. Spend all morning thinking that up, did ya?
No!
At the end of the day, both judges are going to see what they want to see, regardless of what's been pointed out to them.
What saintly vision is this? Oh, a holo statue.
After what you've heard so far, imagine our collective surprise when Judge turns out to be a bit full of themselves. The Emperor is still the one eternal authority in the universe, but it wouldn't hurt to have a zealot or two imbued with his importance. And to be fair, the Judge makes for a damn good preacher. So what's the problem here? Well, there isn't one. I don't think the Inquisition is going to have a problem with an overzealous nutjob sent down to die fighting heretics, even if Judge manages to cuss out every NPC on the Morning Star.
How dare Brand address me in such Lord Milk tells me that my sermon required more. Brahms claims loyalty to the Imperium. Rannick's lack of faith stands in... Careful! You may learn more from the witch than you bargained for.
That's why I'm here.
It's a miracle they even ended up on the Tankwood Bastion and not in some ditch 20 meters away from the beginning of their pilgrimage. And, ironically, under the all-seeing eye of the Inquisition, the biggest scrutiny they fall under is that of their reject peers.
Think a lot of yourself, don't ya? I would never succumb to such vain glory. It would be unbecoming for one of my standing.
Last time I talked about the Judge, I compared them to the crazy grasshopper from Bug's Life. And if you think my integrity has developed since then, well, I still think it's a good comparison. You know you've gone too far when the two most bloodthirsty personalities, barring High Peril Psychers, mention that your overzealous lust for slaughter is freaking them out.
That funny look in your eyes is getting worse.
You alright? Your eyes have gone funny.
I'm curious. Do you smile at anything other than slaughter?
Sometimes not even at that. At the death of a faithful soul, I might even shed a tear.
Just one tear?
Of course. There is no call for extravagance.
Zealousness might not be a shortcoming for the Judge. They have no obvious crises of faith. However, unrelenting faith is tiring for both sides, leading to one very lonely zealot. How this insecurity manifests in conversation is exactly what makes Judge Judge. Besides, it's hard to lie to someone who can read your mind.
You cloak yourself in fervor, fanatic, but it cannot disguise the insecurity within.
What? You think to know my innermost thoughts? I am unyielding, impenetrable!
Have a care, my friend. What is hard so easily becomes brittle, and that which is brittle seldom survives.
As I mentioned, Tertium is bursting the bubbles of all the zealots, and it's making their conversational skills with anyone who isn't a rabid devotee seem very lacking indeed. All the cheeky personalities have ways to poke holes in their narrative.
When did you all become expert on the nature of the divine?
It's become a bit of a competition as to who can take the Judge off guard, although most who take the shot land some sort of blow to the Judge's ego.
You are noisy, Shouty.
Ha! This from one who rants and rails with thunderous might!
Yes, so I know what I'm talking about.
I must concede the point.
It seems fitting that the ones able to do this the most are also those that the Judge has condemned. Savant Psyker, for example, tries to civilize the Zealots, whereas those like the Loner know their chances of talking on equal terms are next to zero, choosing instead to antagonize at every turn.
When did you last consider that you might not be the holiest man in the room?
What a ridiculous question!
Yeah, the Judges may have wanted to join the Order Hereticus when they were younger, but there's no way they could have known that it would involve sharing a Valkyrie with the only two quick-witted Ogryns in 40k fiction. The Ogryns do have 1,000 ways to rattle our faithful warriors, and almost none of them are deliberate. Almost none, as Bully, who is disarming in more ways than one, squabbles constantly. It's led to something you could almost call friendship, and one of the more wholesome personality bonds you can hear in Darktide.
Slab! I haven't forgotten you stole my seat on the Storm Raptor.
Not yours, mine. Saw it first. Servo Skull told me I could have it.
Charlatan! The Servo Skull cannot speak!
Speaks to me. Says I'm handsome.
Speaking the language of the Zealots is the best way to get through to them. Confessionals seem to be one of the Judge's many specialities, so anyone who mentions them can expect a reasonable discussion. They take it so seriously that Savant is able to turn their words against them without any repercussions.
You speak readily of our failings, fanatic, but seldom of your own.
I have more than I care to express, but I would not make a distraction of them. Not during battle.
Then perhaps you would like to speak of them in private. Not all burdens need be borne alone.
Yes, perhaps. I will give the matter careful thought.
After everything I've said so far, it might seem like I'm trying to portray the judge character as an idiot. So I just want to state the fact that I consider all the Darktide personalities to be more complex and wonderful than the majority of folks know, and that you don't need to be a psycho to see where this joke is going. It's not hard to make the judge seem out of touch, so I'm not going to try and spin a narrative or sit here and defame them further by playing out of context voice lines.
I wonder what dark event of your past so shattered your faith in your fellows.
Things around here would be very unfair if I didn't show the absolute saga that is the male judge and femme professional's working relationship. Veterans are actually pretty decent at navigating the minefield that is the average zealot psyche. Femme Prof here runs with it all the way to the gates of terror.
You mistake my passion for arrogance. You are not the first.
Nah, I mistake your arrogance for arrogance. But I never said I didn't like it.
Unfortunately, light teasing is still too much action for the judge, and it immediately goes to his head, leading to a fall from dignity and grace straight into the territory of the vulture-like loner who relishes judge's incompetence.
If you must know, one of the Templars has leveled accusations against me that I am obsessed with her.
Yes, I think I know the one you mean. Don't worry, she is delusional.
So you don't believe her? That is some small relief.
Oh, I didn't say that. I just said she was delusional. I think you would make an absolutely charming couple.
You are not helping.
There's loads of lines insinuating more, and while it would be a great time trying to sort them chronologically, I think I've highlighted the parts that matter. All the more time then to imagine that Judge's entire perception of the Astra Militarum has been ruined by a flirtatious veteran, loose cannon, and a grumpy son or daughter of Cadia.
Guess who's down? Yeah, it's Priest.
One final class remains to be judged, the Zealots themselves. While it might initially seem that their unplanned pilgrimage to Tertium has not humbled them in any way, Judge does show glimpses of humility to a few characters, especially those of the same mad calling.
Thou art so refined, so contained! Dost thou not feel the Master's rage roaring inside thee?
Of course I do, but I control it. Rage is worthless without direction.
Alas, such control hath ever eluded me.
Do not be sorrowful.
Finish it! Finish it!
You cannot help that I am your better.
Jokes aside, of course they mostly get along with the peeps who are just as silly as they are. Much like Ogryns, a flock of zealots can be recognized easily if you start to feel much smarter the moment one opens their mouth. Brainless preaching is only really ever interrupted when one of them remembers human emotions from time to time.
When this began, I never thought I might find myself fighting alongside the like-minded, let alone friends.
The beneficent Emperor knows that travails are better faced in good company than alone.
Indeed he does. Now let's be about his work, kin.
Lead the way, and I shall follow.
Usually, rare lines will reveal something particularly intriguing about a personality, and in this case I'll be using the one you're probably thinking of. The judge does have a softer side, barely enough to redeem a lifetime of unwarranted hatred, but hey, what can you do? We're reaching the end of the vid, and this conversation encapsulates the judge well enough that it can speak for itself.
You know, I almost think of you as family.
Really? Cool.
Adopted family, obviously. A charitable case, rescued from the gutter. But family, nonetheless.
Gutter's nice. Always lots of nice, warm filth to sleep on.
As a boy, at the Sanctum Judicium, I slept on straw.
Don't like straw. Itches. Prefer filth.
Not all of us can reluctantly admit something so controversial, only for the point of it to be completely ignored by a creature who wants to talk about sleeping in shit. Perhaps worse is realizing that the bully Ogryn is one of the better choices when it comes to letting that part of you that wants to connect slip. It's certainly a lot better than loose cannon catching you being sentimental.
Wah, wah, wah!
Perhaps with the introduction of these people, they'll see a new side of the judge. Either way, hope you enjoyed watching me dismember the Emperor's favourite firebrand. I also hope you get to hear some rare voice lines of your own before the next video hits, so that you can prove how wrong I am about these characters.
I come across a very disturbing Vox tape recently. I have no idea how or why, but it followed our fellow humans, and I believe they were food preparators of some kind, maybe a pre-servitor. And there was one. He was a young lad, cooking, making food I've never laid eyes upon before, but he had clearly some sort of Xenos infection. Inside of his scalp, beneath his helmet, a small rodent-like creature delved its claws into his scalp, infiltrated his skull, destroyed his brain, and took control of his functions, making him put most heinous things within the food, poisoning his team. I have never seen something so close to home, yet so disturbing. Morrow, is that you in there? I'm taking my book back, you crispy piece of shit!